The movie starts during Christmas time. The family in this house was getting ready to travel the next day. They were planning to spend Christmas in France. The whole family was busy packing bags and preparing passports. We are introduced to a boy named Kevin. Kevin was ignored by everyone and no one paid attention to him. Downstairs, there was an officer named Harry. He wanted to speak to the head of the house, but no one cared about him because they were focused on the trip the next day, afraid they might forget something. Kevin didn't know how to pack his bag. He asked his siblings for help, but they made fun of him, saying, "You're useless. You can't do anything on your own." Kevin got upset because the house was full of people, yet everyone ignored him and treated him poorly. He wished he could live alone. Even when he asked his brother Buzz if he could sleep in his room that night, Buzz refused and said, "There's no way I'm letting you sleep in my room." Then the kids saw someone through the window. This person was named Marley and was nicknamed the Slasher because it was said he killed his whole family. He was hiding in the neighborhood. The police never caught him due to a lack of evidence. When Marley looked at them, they got scared and went inside. Meanwhile, Officer Harry was still downstairs. He asked the kids when and where they were traveling, but they didn't answer him. Then a pizza delivery guy arrived. Peter, the head of the house, went down to meet the officer. Harry told him, "I'm checking the houses in the area because there are many burglaries during Christmas time. I wanted to make sure you were taking precautions." Peter told him, "Don't worry, everything will be fine." The family gathered in the kitchen to eat pizza, but Buzz, being annoying, ate Kevin's pizza. Kevin got angry and hit Buzz. The parents got up from the table to separate them. The soda spilled on the food, and milk cups fell on the passports. They yelled at Kevin and blamed him for all the chaos. Kevin's mom, Kate, took him to his room. He was upset about the way he was being treated. She met Harry, who hadn't left yet. She told him the whole family was traveling to France the next morning. Harry learned what he wanted to know all along. He told Kate, "Don't worry about the house while you're away. It will be in safe hands." Kate punished Kevin by taking him to the third floor. Even though Kevin was scared of that room, Kevin apologized to his mom, but she said, "Apologies won't help. Go upstairs." Kevin told her, "I hate my whole family. I don't want to live with anyone. I wish I never see you again for the rest of my life." She said, "If you wake up tomorrow and don't find us, you'll be really sad. You definitely don't mean what you're saying." But Kevin didn't care. He wished his family would disappear and he wouldn't see them again. He went to sleep. At night, a heavy storm caused the power to go out in Kevin's house, which meant the alarm clock didn't work. The next morning, repair workers came to fix the electricity. Kate looked at the clock and realized they were late. Everyone in the house woke up late and rushed to get ready and catch the plane. After they were all ready, they got in the airport cars and left. They arrived at the airport just in time. They boarded the plane. But after all this, Kate and Peter didn't notice something important. They had forgotten their son Kevin. It turned out he was still sleeping in the room upstairs. Kevin woke up and walked around the house, not finding anyone. He was surprised by the silence in the house. He went to his parents' room and found no one. He hadn't realized yet that his family had traveled. He went to the garage and saw that their cars were still there because they took airport cars. Kevin thought they never went to the airport. He walked around the house, trying to understand what was happening. He believed his wish came true and they disappeared. When he remembered how badly they treated him, he was happy they were gone. He celebrated in the house and spent his time playing. He did everything he wanted, especially things his parents didn't allow him to do. Meanwhile, Kate felt like she forgot something important. She realized she left her son behind. She was very upset and felt guilty. Her family tried to comfort her, saying, "We'll call him as soon as we arrive in France to make sure he's okay." She said, "How could I forget my son?" Back in Chicago, Officer Harry was with his friend Marv. It turned out Harry wasn't a cop. He was just a burglar. He told his friend, "I found out a family left their house and traveled to France. That house will be perfect for us to rob." At the same time, Kevin was sleeping in front of the TV. Harry and Marv arrived in their car in front of Kevin's house. Kevin woke up to their noise and saw them walking in front of the house. He realized they were burglars. The burglars were about to break in through the basement. Kevin ran and turned on the basement light. The burglars realized someone was home and ran away. Kevin hid under the bed out of fear. But then he said to himself, "I can't hide like a coward. I'm the man of the house now." He went outside and shouted, "I'm not afraid of you." But when he saw Marley the Slasher, he got scared and ran back inside under the blanket. As soon as Kate arrives in France, she rushes to the nearest phone. But Kevin's phone is out of order due to a power outage. Kate calls the police station in the area and asks the officer to check on her son's house to make sure he's fine. And indeed, a police officer goes to the house and knocks. But Kevin is so scared, thinking it's Marley, and stays under the blanket. The officer knocks a lot, but then concludes that no one is home and the house is safe. Meanwhile, Peter wanted to book a return ticket to Chicago as quickly as possible, but unfortunately, all reservations were taken. The closest available flight is after 2 days. Peter tells Kate, "I think we should go to a hotel and rest. The police will keep us updated on our son." But Kate refuses this idea, and says, "I'm not moving until I get on a plane and return to Kevin." The employee tells her that they can put her on the waiting list, in case there are any available spots on the flight. Kate likes this idea, and they agree that Kate will stay alone at the airport, while the rest of them continue their trip as planned. We go back to Kevin, who wanted to get money from the shelf, but the shelves broke and everything fell. Kevin grabs the money and moves on, and we see that a spider has escaped from the cage it was in. Meanwhile, the two thieves had broken into the house next to Kevin's and were stealing everything literally. They are surprised when they hear a voicemail on the house phone. The message is from Peter, Kevin's dad. Peter says that he and his family traveled to France, and Marv hears this message and becomes very happy. He realizes that Peter's family has indeed traveled, and he and Marv decide to steal Peter's house that night. Before they leave, Marv blocks the drain and opens the kitchen taps to leave his signature at the house. He always does this move at every house they rob. Meanwhile, Kevin is at the supermarket and wants to buy a toothbrush. Suddenly, the killer Marley appears next to him. Kevin gets terrified, grabs the toothbrush and runs out of the store. The store employee reports Kevin to the police, saying the boy is a thief, and the police chase Kevin, but the officer slips on the ice and can't catch him. Kevin is upset because he feels like a criminal now. He's on his way home. At the same time, Harry and Marv were leaving the house they just robbed, and they almost bump into Kevin, but Harry slams on the brakes quickly and says to Kevin, "Be careful as you walk." But Kevin remembers that this is the same guy who was dressed like a police officer at their house. Harry is confused because the boy looks at him in a strange way, and they decide to follow him to see which house he goes into. Kevin realizes that these are the same thieves who were going to break into his house last night, and decides to run and not enter the house. He hides in the church, and the thieves walk away. When Kevin is sure they've left, he quickly runs back to his house and says to himself, "I'm ready if these thieves come to my house again." And indeed, that night they pass by his house, and they're confused because they see people dancing and partying inside the house. But it turns out that this is a trick Kevin set up. He placed some dolls and moved them to make the thieves think that there were people in the house, and they decide not to rob it. Harry and Marv walk away, and Kevin is happy that his plan worked. Meanwhile, Peter was calling all their neighbors in Chicago, but no one was home. Kate was trying to pay a lot of money to any traveler going to America, even offering her jewelry to buy their ticket. She offered it to a woman traveling to Texas, and the idea worked, and the woman agreed. Kate traveled by plane. Meanwhile, Kevin was starting to feel lonely because it was Christmas time, and he wished he could spend it with his family. He looks at a picture of his family and says, "I didn't mean the things I said. I want you all to come back." The next morning, he goes to the supermarket and buys everything he needs for the house, because now he depends on himself. He washes his own clothes and gets used to being alone. Meanwhile, the two thieves are outside his house, and they're surprised because the house looked empty. But last night it was full of people. Harry tells Marv to go check the house. Marv goes to the kitchen door, and Kevin sees him from behind the door. He plays a recording on the TV of a person saying, "If you don't leave, I'll shoot you," to scare the thief. And Kevin lights some fireworks to make them think there's real gunfire. And indeed, Marv gets scared and goes back to Harry and tells him that he heard gunshots and that someone died. But Harry is curious to know what happened and who died, so they decide to wait in the car and see who will come out of the house. Meanwhile, Kate had just arrived in America, and she asked for a ticket to Chicago. But unfortunately, all the tickets for today were sold out. She got angry and ordered the employee to do something. A man overheard her and came to talk to her privately. He had heard that she had a problem and needed to go back to Chicago, so he offered her a ride because he and his band were going to Chicago. She agrees without hesitation. Harry and Marv, on the other hand, were sitting in their car outside Kevin's house, and they saw Kevin leaving the house. Harry realizes that Kevin has been tricking them all this time, and they go to spy on the house and find out that he's really alone. Harry tells Marv, "We have to rob this house tonight." Marv was against the idea because there's a kid in the house, but Harry wasn't concerned. He tells him, "Since the moment we entered this house, I've wanted to steal it, and Kevin is spying on them." He hears that they'll come at 9 p.m., and Marv agrees to the idea, not knowing that this little boy will ruin all their plans. Kate, meanwhile, had started traveling with the band. That night, Kevin sees someone dressed as Santa Claus and says, "I don't want Santa to bring me toys or candy. I just want my family back." He walks around and sees a family gathering and celebrating, and he feels sad because he misses the warmth of his family. He then goes into the church and is surprised to see Marley there. Marley starts approaching him and says, "Happy New Year to you." He sits next to him and says, "I know you. You live next door. When you see me, just say hi. There's no need to be scared of me. There are a lot of rumors about me, but they're all false. Like the rumor that I killed my family. The girl over there who's singing is my granddaughter. And I hope you've been a good boy this year." Kevin says, "This year I did a lot of bad things. And there's a wish I made about my family that I shouldn't have made. I love my family, but sometimes I say I don't. But I actually do love them." Marley tells him, "Deep down, you do love your family, but sometimes you forget that you love them. And sometimes they hurt you or you hurt them. And this isn't because you're young, it's because all families are like that." Marley then tells him a story about himself. 2 years ago, I lost my temper and had an argument with my son. I told him I never wanted to see him again, and he told me he didn't want to see me again either. Since then, we haven't seen each other, and I'm afraid to call him because I'm afraid he won't answer. Kevin advises him to call his son and says, "You don't know if he wants to talk to you or not. Maybe when you call him, he really wants to talk to you. At least if he doesn't answer, you'll know, instead of being anxious like this, especially since it's Christmas. So we should be wishing each other a Merry Christmas." Marley likes Kevin's words and shakes his hand, asking him to go because it's getting late. As Kevin walks away, he hears the church bells ringing, so he knows that it's almost 9 p.m., and he runs back to his house, saying, "This is my house and I have to defend it." He comes up with a plan to fight off the thieves and starts setting traps around the house and the door. After a few minutes, Harry and Marv arrive, and they think Kevin is a dumb kid and they'll rob the house easily. They go to the back door and knock, and talk to Kevin saying, "We brought you gifts because we knew you were alone. Let us in so we can give you the gifts." But Kevin pulls out a shotgun from the door crack and shoots Harry in the leg. Marv sticks his head in, and Kevin hits him in the face. They get angry and decide to break into the house. Harry orders Marv to go through the basement, while he's going to enter from the front door. But he encounters the first trap. The ground is covered in ice, and he slips and falls on his back. Marv also slips while going to the basement, but he manages to get back up and enter the house. Suddenly, a bucket falls on him, leaving a mark on his face. Meanwhile, Harry grabs the railing and climbs the stairs. He touches the door handle, but it's so hot he can't bear it, so he puts his hand in the snow to cool it down, and the handle leaves a burn mark on his hand. Kevin is happy because his traps are working. Meanwhile, Marv, who took off his shoes while climbing the stairs because the stairs were covered in sticky material, now steps on a nail and screams in pain. Harry tries to be clever and goes to enter the kitchen door, but when he opens it, a fire goes off in his face, so he runs to put out the fire in the snow. After that, he runs to break the door and enters. He starts yelling at Kevin, saying, "I'll come for you and hit you." Kevin says, "Come on, I'm waiting for you." Harry opens the door to find feathers flying in his face, and Marv exits the basement barefoot. He notices that the window is open, so he decides to enter through it. But as he's entering, he steps on sharp toys. Harry and Marv meet up, and Kevin calls out to them, "Come to me." But they slip on the toys scattered around the ground, and just as they are about to catch up with Kevin, they bump into paint cans that Kevin placed, and they fall back. But they don't give up and want to take revenge on Kevin. They belittle him, saying, "He's just a little kid, and we'll catch him easily." They don't know that the traps aren't over yet. Kevin calls the police and reports that thieves have broken into his house. Harry and Marv run after him, but Harry slips. Marv grabs Kevin by the leg, but Kevin places the spider on Marv's face, and Marv screams in terror, throwing it at Harry. Marv grabs a metal rod to hit Kevin, but accidentally hits Harry. The spider hasn't died yet. Kevin climbs to the upper floor and uses the rope to reach the treehouse. Harry and Marv climb after him. Kevin taunts them, saying, "Come catch me if you can." Harry doesn't want to go back into the house and pass through all the traps again, so he decides they should climb the rope to reach him from there. And this is the dumbest decision they make, because Kevin cuts the rope and drops them to the ground. After that, Kevin runs in front of them and heads for his neighbor's house. But Harry stops Marv and says, he wants us to follow him so he can trap us. I have a better idea. Kevin enters the neighbor's house through the basement, and when he goes up to the house, he finds Harry and Marv in front of him. They catch him and hold him up. Harry tells him, "We'll do to you what you did to us." But Marley suddenly appears and hits them on the head, knocking them unconscious, and takes Kevin back to his house. After that, the police arrive and arrest Harry and Marv. The officer tells them, "We know all the houses you've robbed, because in every house you've robbed, you left the faucets running." Kevin is happy about his victory over them, and he spends that night in peace. The next morning, Kevin wakes up wanting to see his mom in the house, and gets upset because she's not there. But after a few minutes, she returns, and Kevin runs to her and hugs her. They're surprised to find that the whole family has come back. Kate asks them, "How did you get here?" They tell her, "We took the plane we had booked, and if you had waited, you would have come back with us. It would have been the same time." And Peter hugs his son, and Buzz greets him. Kevin tells them that he bought a lot of things from the supermarket, so the house is not missing anything. When Kevin looks out the window, he sees that Marley has met his son and reconciled with him. He hugs his granddaughter and then greets Kevin.